Warsaw, Poland, September 12th, 2025. A diplomatic storm has erupted across Europe and Washington after US President Donald Trump suggested that a Russian drone strike in Poland might have been nothing more than a mistake. The remark, delivered during a press appearance in Washington on Thursday, drew swift and sharp rejection from Polish leaders who insist that the incursion was deliberate, dangerous, and part of a growing pattern of Russian provocations. The dispute now sits at the heart of NATO deliberations as Poland's government scrambles to demonstrate strength and unity in the face of Moscow's actions, while Washington walks a fine line between caution and deterrence. On Thursday, President Trump was asked about reports that as many as 19 Russian drones had crossed into Polish territory earlier in the week. The drones, Warsaw claims, were intercepted by its armed forces with NATO support, though at least 3 were shot down only after penetrating Polish skies. Appearing visibly restrained but firm, Trump acknowledged the seriousness of the incident, but downplayed the idea of intentional aggression. Donald Trump, President of the United States, said, "It could have been a mistake." But regardless, I'm not happy about anything related to the whole situation, but I hope this all comes to an end. The comment was brief, just under 10 seconds, but its implications reverberated quickly. By raising the possibility of a mistake, Trump effectively softened the perception of direct Russian hostility toward a NATO member state, a posture that Polish officials found deeply unsettling. His remark came less than 24 hours before Poland's leadership convened its National Security Council, a meeting filled with urgency and heavy symbolism, as Prime Minister Donald Tusk and President Karol Nawrocki sought to project unity and control. The reaction in Warsaw was swift. On Friday morning, Prime Minister Donald Tusk, speaking through a post on the social media platform X, dismissed Trump's claim outright. Donald Tusk, Prime Minister of Poland, wrote, "We would have liked the attack to be a mistake, but it wasn't." The bluntness of Tusk's response reflected Poland's political mood. In recent months, the country has repeatedly warned NATO allies about Russian attempts to test alliance defences. For Tusk, Trump's suggestion was not just inaccurate, but diplomatically unhelpful at a moment when Poland is urging solidarity. Poland's military reported that no injuries resulted from the drone intrusions, but insisted that the scale, 19 drones, showed an unmistakable pattern of escalation. Officials described the incursion as the most serious violation of Polish airspace since the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. NATO headquarters in Brussels quickly backed Poland's account, with alliance officials condemning Moscow's reckless behaviour. A joint statement reiterated that any attack or threat to a NATO member would trigger serious consequences, though officials stopped short of referencing Article 5, the clause that guarantees mutual defence. The Kremlin, meanwhile, denied responsibility. Russian officials insisted that Warsaw lacked concrete evidence that the drones were Russian in origin. Spokespersons accused Poland of fueling anti-Russian hysteria for political purposes and dismissed NATO's reaction as theatrics. The denials did little to calm tensions in Eastern Europe, where military planners see the drone incursions as part of a hybrid campaign to destabilise frontline NATO states. Analysts note that even when Russian involvement cannot be proven beyond doubt, the repeated pattern of border violations creates a sense of uncertainty and forces NATO to respond. In Wyriki, a rural community in eastern Poland close to the Belarusian border, the aftermath of the strike was visible. FPTV footage showed the charred remains of a house and a police cordon sealing off the area. Residents stood silently behind barricades, their faces reflecting both shock and resilience. For them, the debate in Washington and Warsaw is less abstract. It is a lived reality. First, we heard a loud buzzing, then the explosion, one villager told local reporters. "We are used to hearing about the war in Ukraine, but now it feels like it is here." These images of destruction, while limited in scope compared to the devastation across Ukraine, carried powerful symbolism. They reinforced Poland's argument that Russian aggression is not a distant threat, but a direct danger to NATO's eastern flank. Trump's choice of words, "It could have been a mistake," was consistent with his broader approach to foreign conflicts since returning to office. He has sought to avoid being pulled into what he often describes as endless wars, while at the same time insisting that America remains strong and vigilant. Yet the remark also reflects the delicate position Washington finds itself in. Acknowledging deliberate Russian aggression against Poland could place immense pressure on NATO to escalate militarily, something both Trump and European leaders are eager to avoid. By raising the possibility of an error, Trump signalled a desire to keep diplomatic options open. Still, critics argue that such language risks undermining deterrence. By softening the narrative, they say, Trump risks emboldening Moscow to continue testing NATO's defences. For Donald Tusk, the episode is also a test of domestic leadership. His rejection of Trump's mistake theory reflects both national pride and political necessity. Poland has cast itself as NATO's frontline defender, and any suggestion of downplaying threats could weaken its position at home. At the National Security Council meeting in Warsaw, television cameras captured Tusk and senior military officials seated in tense silence before discussions began. Polish President Karol Nawrocki opened the session with a sober address, warning that Poland will not hesitate to defend every inch of its territory. The imagery, officials gathered in a secure chamber, the president at the podium, military leaders flanking him, was carefully staged to convey resolve. In Poland's political theatre, appearances matter as much as words. The incident has reignited debates across Europe about the continent's security. In Berlin, officials called for a measured but firm response, while Paris emphasised the importance of avoiding escalation. In the Baltic states, leaders expressed solidarity with Poland, warning that what happens in Warsaw could happen in Riga, Tallinn or Vilnius tomorrow. The drone incident also comes at a sensitive moment in Ukraine's war effort. Kyiv continues to push for more Western support, while Russia ramps up its use of drones to exhaust Ukrainian defences. For many observers, the Polish episode underscores the risk that the conflict could spill further across borders. Moscow's insistence that the drones were not Russian fits into a long-standing pattern of plausible deniability. By keeping its adversaries guessing, Russia forces NATO into difficult debates over evidence, proportionality and response. Yet for ordinary Poles, the denials ring hollow. With Ukraine's war raging just across the border, many see the incursions as part of a broader campaign of intimidation. Local officials warn that Russia aims to test Poland's patience, NATO's cohesion and Washington's resolve. At its core, the dispute between Trump and Tusk represents more than just differing assessments of a drone strike. It is a clash of narratives. For Trump, the emphasis is on caution and de-escalation. By suggesting the possibility of error, he keeps space open for dialogue and avoids binding commitments. For Tusk, the priority is deterrence and credibility. Accepting the mistake hypothesis would, in his view, signal weakness and invite further aggression. Both leaders face domestic and international pressures that shape their rhetoric. For Trump, it is about avoiding a foreign entanglement that could define his presidency. For Tusk, it is about proving that Poland will not be intimidated. As the dust settles, one fact is clear. The Russian drone incursion into Poland has exposed cracks within the transatlantic alliance. While NATO remains formally united in condemning Moscow, the nuances in Washington and Warsaw's language reveal tensions in strategy and perception. The coming weeks will test whether these differences can be managed or whether Russia will exploit them to sow deeper discord. For now, Polish villagers in Wieriki live with the knowledge that their homes have become part of a geopolitical fault line. For Trump and Tusk, their words, mistake or attack, may define not only their own political legacies, but also the future of NATO unity.